Welcome back. OYO, one of India's leading travel and hotel booking platforms, has announced a major change in policy for its partner hotels, specifying that hotels are at discretion to not entertain bookings from unmarried couples and can deny rooms. The new rule, the company has said, will initially be applicable only in Uttar Pradesh's Meerut. So now hotels have the discretion to cancel or not confirm bookings of couples if proof of marriage isn't produced. The updated guidelines require all married couples to provide valid proof of relationship during checking, including for online bookings. Interestingly, while talking about the change in guidelines, OYO's Pavas Sharma, region head of North India, has told PTI that OYO is committed to maintaining safe and responsible hospitality practices. While it respects individual freedom and personal liberty, it also recognizes its responsibility to collaborate with law enforcement and civil society groups in the specific regions where it operates. Well, what does this really mean? I'm being joined by Lloyd Mathias, who's a business executive and independent director, as well as Rahul Ishwar, who will be joining us shortly. He's an activist. Thank you very much, both of you, for joining us. Lloyd Mathias, first to you. What do you make out of this? Because OYO created a lot of buzz. And one of the first things that it really championed was a right for anyone to go ahead and book, and no proof of marriage to be asked for, that being just one. And it was not just for 24 hours, it could be for X number of hours. What do you make out of a brand like OYO now saying, at least in Meerut, hotels are open to use their discretion to say no to unmarried couples for their bookings?
Thank you for having me on your show, Sneha. I think fundamentally, the whole issue is ridiculous. I think, for one, it is completely discriminatory. Number two, I think it's illegal. It goes against personal freedom of individuals. It goes against their liberty. And third, I think it smacks of a very base level of moral policing. Who is an organization to insist on people proving their marital status? They're well within their rights to ask people for proof of an Aadhaar card, proof of residence. But getting into people's marital status, where does this stop? I mean, next time around, they might ask to prove whether you're vegetarian or non-vegetarian. Or do you come from a particular part of the country? Or what is your caste? I think it's going well beyond personal freedom. And I think it completely smacks of being totally discriminatory, and therefore has to be condemned. I think this kind of moral policing is completely unacceptable. And I think there'll be no limit to what happens next. So I'm surprised that a large organization like OYO has resorted to something as stupid as this, because there's absolutely no case for whatever, and it's patently illegal.
Rahul Ishwar, you've heard Lloyd Mathias. He's saying it's absolutely illegal, it's hugely discriminatory. And remember, this is something that OYO had really stood against for when it came into the market, creating a lot of ripples.
Snehaji, let's be honest about
Rahul
this.
Ishwar.
There is an ethical debate that really goes on. There is a right conservative and left liberal prism through which people see relationship. And right conservative spectrum always upholds the sanctity of marriage as a prerequisite or an institution where sexuality should be confined to. And there are many people, youngsters, who are misusing OYOs. No, we shouldn't be oblivious to such things, because everyone knows these. So if OYO is asking as a policy change that only married couple can register, it can decrease the misuse of people who are abusing this space and privilege for their own other activities, for their own unethical behavior, for their own socially unacceptable behavior. Why can't we see this as an honest ethical debate rather than a progressive versus all the other people are backward kind of mentality kind of a debate? So OYO, there are huge parts of India where people are having inhibitions.
No, I did not get that anywhere. I did not talk about this being backward. Neither did Lloyd Mathias talk about this being backward, Rahul Ishwar. But since you bring that in, let me ask you this question. Why even bring that angle in? I mean, why should anybody who's booking a room be asked for their marriage certificates? You can, of course, ask them for their ID proof, since that's absolutely legitimate to ask for ID proofs. What's with this marriage certificate?
Sneha, let's be honest, because that is the angle behind this whole policy change. Why should we close our eyes? We should be intellectually honest, socially honest to accept that this is the premise. Otherwise, why should they be asking? So the entire premise is regarding ethics or morality, as many people call it, or social ethics, social mores. And in a nation like
So
India,
now to
we
get into
believe
restaurants and
sexuality should be.
parks also, will marriage ID cards be asked for, marriage certificates be asked for?
The marriage certificate are asked to prove the relationship. Otherwise, if a man and a woman of various other intentions are going
Why?
and misusing
Okay,
that
Lloyd
space,
Mathias
how
come in.
can they
So
know?
he's saying it's unethical to get inside hotels, book rooms if you are not married. So my question is, then is it ethical to go into parks and restaurants? What is this even about? I mean, constitutionally, legally, who is, I mean, society may think about left liberal or right or whichever spectrum, whatever the society thinks, it's not happening in anybody's house or anybody's physical space. It's happening, whatever the choice is happening. They have gone and booked a room inside a hotel. It's a business choice that they are making. They are paying for the money.
Absolutely. I think, I think putting a layer of morality, I think is completely stupid. I think the essential is that the illegalness of asking for marital proof. If two consenting adults enter a hotel room to hold hands, to talk, to have a deep, what, it's completely their business. Who is come in the name of the come in between them? It's legal as per Indian law for adults to have consenting relationships. They could be married, they could be unmarried, they could be married to somebody else. It's perfectly legal as far as Indian law goes, right? The next they could be asking is, you cannot be holding hands in public places. So I think there's no limit to lack of morality. I'd like to ask Rahul Ishwar, what if the same OYO decides that in Meerut, they do not want to have South Indians? They only want to have people from the state of UP, right? So show your domicile certificate. If you belong to Kerala or Tamil Nadu, too bad. OYO only wants to have people from the state of UP. Will that be acceptable to him? That's again putting a moral dimension, right? This is a free country. Whatever is permitted by law, show your ID proof. That's a security concern. But asking for a marriage certificate is patently ridiculous.
Lloyd, sir, with due respect, what you are doing is a
Rahul
straw man
Ishwar.
argument, extending an argument to a limit where it sounds absurd. Let's not use straw man arguments. What is the whole concern here? OYO or many people, especially on the conservative spectrum, basically feels these spaces are being misused. These spaces are being misused by unmarried couples for having
Misused for what?
illegitimate relationships. This is the whole concern, right? Why should we be shy about telling that? Why should we
But
go away
who are
from
we
telling
to
that? This is the
determine?
premise
Who are
on which
we
the
to
entire
determine
question is
the?
asked.
What do you mean by
Rahul, who are
misuse?
we to
What
determine?
is
Rahul, who
this
is OYO
misuse?
or
How
who
are
are
we
we?
only going and saying in Meerut, only in Meerut, you have places or hotel rooms which are being misused by so-called unmarried couples? What is this about? Again, where are we drawing this moral spectrum from? There was a
It's
time,
basically about
Rahul
moral
Ishwar, if you
spectrum.
remember, there were people who would say there are unmarried couples who are misusing parks. There are
Yes,
unmarried
there are.
couples who are misusing restaurants. You know, there was an
There
argument.
are.
Now that argument is being extended to hotel rooms. It's just arguments in very, very
Haji, you
different
may
lengths, but
remember,
it's been perennial.
you may remember the huge controversy that Khushbuji sparked with her premarital sex kind of a comment. This is the same debate. We may agree or disagree, but the entire premise is the basis of ethics. How do we view sexuality? What is the role of marriage? What is the role of sexuality and marriage in this? Is this not the premise that we are debating? Are we debating some kind of a off-the-book thing where OYO one sudden fine day decided that they are going to have this?
No, Rahul
So let us
Ishwar,
be
it doesn't
honest
matter
about
what the
this.
morality is. There's also a legal grounding. Would you agree to that? There is a constitutional right. There's a legal grounding, and there are court's orders. All of
There
this,
is the
prepare the
constitutional
ground,
right.
lay the basis on whether something is to be allowed or not to be allowed. That was a business model that was legally recognized, allowed in India, because the laws allow for it.
See, legally, they can also argue OYO has a right to admit whosoever their client is. How can this be discrimination? For example, this is not against any one particular community, against not any state, against not any language. See, the entire fiber of this debate is ethical, and many a times our left liberal friends totally is oblivious of what the debate is. See, please remember, we may disagree on points, but the entire debate is regarding the role of sexuality, immorality, ethics. This is the debate that we are having. having. We may be standing on various places, but this is the reason why people are deciding. And when we are not addressing the elephant in the room and addressing the other small
So
things
are
that
you
are there, and the
saying,
whole idea of consent
so Lord
is a left
Mathias,
liberal
here
idea
you
where
have
you say
Rahul
after
Ishwar
18
who's saying that you are completely oblivious of what the real debate is. And you are, Lloyd Mathias, he's saying that, listen, it is for people to decide, and they have decided that two people must not go inside a hotel room and book a room for themselves. Here, this is what Rahul Ishwar is contending. Lord Mathias, if people can decide what needs to be done, then this country is going to be run from very different lens and not from a legal lens.
Absolutely, Sneha. I just want a couple of points to point a couple of flaws in Rahul's argument. I think one, he says that it's for OYO to decide. Absolutely, as a private entity, OYO can decide who it wants to admit, but it cannot ask for proof of marriage. If OYO, for whatever reason, believes that its managers can take a call that someone is not worthy of living there, that's possible. But to ask for proof of marriage is patently illegal, because the government of India is very clear that individual liberties, two consenting adults can choose to rent a hotel room, can choose to walk in a park holding hands, can have a deep conversation, can engage in business or do whatever. That's completely legal. There's absolutely no left liberal argument or right conservative argument, right? So this is completely, bizarre. The second thing, and important to understand, is there's no limit to what other hurdles you can put in. Today, you demand for a marital certificate. Tomorrow, you can demand saying that, is this person vegetarian or non-vegetarian, right? And this is not a straw man argument, because morality can come in various levels, right? There could be a hotel chain saying that, sorry, we're not going to admit non-vegetarians. Or tomorrow, there could be someone saying that we're not going to admit people of a certain race or for a dark skin. Where does the limit stop? So I think Rahul has to understand something very basic. It is a free country. You got to let consenting adults do what they have to. If there is a case of whatever illegitimate that he assumes is
Rahul
happening,
Ishwar, can I just get you in to respond to Lloyd Mathias? And my last question, Rahul Ishwar, you travel the world and you, of course, travel with your wife as well. I want to ask you this question. Any place in any part of the world, much of the world for that matter, have you been asked your marriage certificate? Because I haven't. I haven't been asked for my marriage certificate ever whenever I've traveled, whether in India or outside.
Yeah, Snehaji, but please remember the Indian context is different. Indian context, we value families, we value things like sexuality, we value things like ethics and morality in a big way. We can definitely debate whether it is this much
Rahul
needed.
Ishwar,
But
you're
the point is,
degrading
this
the
is the
other
core of the
world
debate.
very casually. Are you saying the other world is not bothered about sexuality and morality and family?
We all know that West family as an institution is collapsing. That's really happening. That's the reason why
There's
there is
also
a decline of
East. Why
West.
only
So
West?
we value families. Yes, absolutely yes. And this is not told by Rahul Ishwar. This is told by Pope himself. Marpapa or Pope himself says family is the future. We should focus more on families. There,
Oh,
if
by
you
the
can
way,
see the falling birth rates, there are falling
no, Rahul
fertility rates,
Ishwar, by the way,
collapsing
neither the
families,
Vatican,
are all
neither
empirical
in Rome would
reality.
you be requiring your marriage certificates, irrespective of what the Pope says. But Lloyd Mathias, one very quick last question. What does this mean for brand India? Or does it mean anything at this point?
well, I think it's too small an issue at one confined place, but I certainly hope that this doesn't spread. I think it also smacks very much of ultra conservatism. I think this is not directionally where India should be going. As a growing modern country that's embracing the world, I think we have to be absolutely fair and respect human liberty at its ultimate. And putting these kind of moral arguments and having these kind of back and forths just doesn't go very well, neither for brand India or nor for our republic in general.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, both of you, Lloyd Mathias as well as Rahul Ishwar. Thank you very much for tuning in and for joining us on this panel.